Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time you tune in, you'll want to know that this is the top podcast in consumer goods and retail in Europe. And not only me saying it, it's our over 23,000 followers on LinkedIn. We're also part of a family of podcasts, which is headed by the CPG guys at the other side of the Atlantic. They cover everything that is happening in the omni consumer goods world in the United States. So tune into the CPG guys who are about, if not already, at their 500 episodes. So pretty exciting time for them, and congratulations to Shri and Peter. So a topic that we've covered here on the show through and through has been e-commerce. We've had retail media, e-commerce practitioners, digital marketing. But today we're going to take a bit of a different angle on it, because we're actually going to speak with someone that's been a GM for a long time, hasn't really done an purely e-commerce role, but I know he's very passionate about it. So when I was speaking with him recently, I was like, okay, well, we should do a podcast about how general managers, why they should get involved in e-com and how they should get involved in e-com, and to go through some examples. So to speak about this, I'm welcoming no other than Mehmet Karamollaoglu, who's the GM Eurasia and Turkey at Mondelez. Hey, Mehmet, how are you?
Very good, Daniel. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm excited to be part of your podcast.
I know it's been a long time that we've been in touch. I don't know how long, but I think it's been probably a good 7 or 8 years. So
8 years, exactly.
Who would have known when I called you the first time for a headhunting call that we would end up doing a podcast together?
Exactly. I think I was in Bangkok when we first met. I was in Bangkok when you contacted me.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know that you were somewhere around the world because you've been in a lot of places. I know one thing. I was in Barcelona, that's for sure.
Yes.
So you're in Istanbul right now. How are things over there?
Exactly. I mean, it's been 4 months. I came back to my home country to be a little bit closer to the family, but I was located in Africa and Singapore before for the last 2 years at L'Oreal, and because of family reasons, I relocated to Istanbul and started at a new company, Mondelez, as a managing director for the Eurasia and Turkey region, responsible for 12 countries, approximately 600 million euro net revenue, and more than 2,000 people and 2 factories in snacks business. So
if there's any alien that doesn't know who Mondelez is, it's a company behind famous brands such as Oreos, for example.
Yeah, Milka, Oreo, Cadbury.
Yeah, exactly. So Mehmet, I think that one thing that I've really always appreciate about your profile, let's say as an executive, is the fact that you're super international. Like, you're one of these people that somehow very early on went international, and you've been all over. Tell me a bit, like, the beginning, like, how did you, so I think you did your university in Turkey, but then very quickly you went international. How did that happen?
Well, first of all, I went to US for my MBA without waiting too long, and that started my international journey. I started in US at GlaxoSmithKline, consumer healthcare. And then afterwards, I was recruited by Johnson & Johnson in Germany. And I lived for 10 years in Germany working for Johnson & Johnson. And then afterwards, Mars Pet Care, and finally Henkel Beauty Care headquarters. But I was always willing to explore the world and accept and prioritize different experiences in Asia or in different parts of the world. To make sure I learn more. It's a good growth journey when you have the opportunity to work in different countries, to learn new, trade landscapes, different cultures. It's extremely exciting. So I would do exactly the same thing if I would have started all over again.
How did you have it in you, though, to, like, very early on, do your MBA in the US, for example, Like I'm sure that your friends in Turkey were not doing the same thing.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, it's first of all, networking is. I would recommend to all the people. Networking, global networking is key. Uh, I mean, especially with social, uh, platforms like LinkedIn and social media. Networking has become much more effective in the last, let's say, 15 years. And even when I was doing my MBA, there were a lot of opportunities to network with global headhunters, global recruitment heads of the international companies. I always had in mind that I would definitely work abroad and work in different countries. And the thing is, some people have barriers. This is where I don't want to work. This is where I want to work. I didn't have these barriers. So these mental barriers is something I think is key. When you're geographically mobile, it also helps your career growth as well. Then there you give more options to senior management. When you're not restricted by geography, then you can grow much faster in your career as well. That's another advantage.
Yeah. And how was it like for you, like to go? You were in the US and then you went to Germany. How was that change?
Well, it's always a challenge at the beginning, and the earlier you begin, the more agile and adaptable you become. When you have a family, it's much more difficult. First of all, the language makes a huge difference. When you're single or when you're not married, you learn the language much faster. Language plays a big role, I think, in the local adaptation. I learned German very quickly by going out, drinking beer with Germans. It really accelerates your process.
And you had no idea. Did you speak German at all?
Zero. It's not. Now it's like my second native language.
Wow. So you went to Germany without speaking any German?
No, zero.
Wow. And what was behind the thinking? So when you moved to Germany, you were in J&J for 4 years and a half. Then you moved to Mars for 3 years. Then you moved to Henkel when you spent nearly 9 years. What were because that's something that, especially in these early stages of your career, people really struggle to take that decision to make the change at the right time. How was it, intuition or?
Well, part of it is intuition. Part of it is just going with the flow, being spontaneous. I'm also, like, you're from Barcelona. I'm also from the Mediterranean coast of Turkey. I think it's a relaxed mindset. The people in Barcelona, much more relaxed people, much more open-minded.
But that relaxed mindset also makes a lot of people that I know be very conformist, if you know what I mean. So, I don't think you have to have a degree of non-conformity to make these moves.
I agree. So I combined a little bit open mindset plus challenging myself and becoming, out of your comfort zone, because Germany was very much outside the comfort zone in terms of the way of working. Let's say it's much more discipline into details. Execution is extremely important. Structural obsession with rules and processes and planning. So of course I had to adapt a lot. But what makes it easy? You build friends, and that makes it much more enjoyable. The more you build friends and connections, when you socialize more, I think you start enjoying everywhere. If you cannot socialize and embed yourself in the local culture, it becomes a much more bigger challenge. And Germany is the, I think, fourth biggest economy in the world, and it's a powerhouse of Europe. So it was not a bad bet. Let's say it was not a big risk. I mean, I even accepted later in my career to work in Kenya, which is even a bigger bet, I would say, at the age of, after age of 40, going into Africa, I would say is a bigger bet, where it's much more difficult because of, risk. The regulations are tough. Security can be very tough in Africa. I would say Germany was a safe bet. It's still in the middle of Europe. You can travel everywhere.
It's all relative at the end of the day, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Germans, in spite of the opinions or stereotypes, it's really a lot of fun, especially in the west part of Germany, in in Düsseldorf, Köln. It's extremely fun to live there,
Mm.
So I had one of the best times in my life. Germany was definitely a top period for me.
And speaking about career milestones, do you remember when you took on your first management responsibility, the first time that you had people reporting into you?
Yes, it was when I started at Johnson & Johnson, the marketing director. You need in the career people who would believe in you and who would support you, because when typical HR consultants tell you choose bosses and not companies, I definitely think there's a big merit, there's a big reality in it. When you work with the right people, it makes a huge difference in your career. The people who are willing to invest, grow you. So I was kind of very lucky because I ended up working with very good people, very good bosses, and like Stefan Meyer, who was my director, coming from P&G, working at Johnson and Johnson, and Jacques-Paul Leroy, the French managing director. They supported me a lot, although I was just a Turkish guy working in Germany and not speaking German at that time very fluently. They bet on me. They supported me. That's when I got promoted. That was a milestone when I was working for Johnson and Johnson in Germany as a young marketeer. That made the big change when you get supported early on in your career. So it really depends on with whom you work and that you have the right support. So these people were open to diversity. Both our French managing director and our marketing director, they really supported me a lot. And good thing you always remember them for the next 20 years. You always think about them, contact them, and you always remain grateful. So that's the big milestone, I would say, for your question.
And that's when you took on management responsibility as well,
Yes.
management responsibility.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
And I know that at Henkel, after a decade or practically a decade in Germany, they moved you back to your home country, to Turkey, where you never actually properly worked, no, as marketing and sales director.
Exactly. Well, at that time, it was a private decision. I wanted to get married, and in my home country, I was really happy in Germany. Still debate as of today whether it was the right decision. And went back to Turkey to get married. HR was shocked because they were like, "Hey, you're in the headquarters. Why would you want to go back to Turkey?" I said, I need to get married. And I could still remember the HR global director being shocked, very rational German lady. Why do you, if you go back to Turkey, are you sure you're going to get married? Is that how it works?
Yeah. And
This is a
why do you need to move there?
Yeah, I moved to Turkey and I met my wife, interestingly. And then I did get married very quickly. And I'm still married with the same woman. So it did pay off privately. Now I have 3 kids. And then it was a good experience in Turkey because that's the only time in my whole life I had the commercial experience, especially traditional trade and a little bit e-commerce responsibility at the early stages of my career. But then they moved me to Thailand as a general manager of Henkel, Thailand, Southeast Asia. So I stayed only 4 years in Turkey, then moved to Bangkok afterwards.
Great city, by the way, Bangkok.
Amazing place, amazing.
And then you went from being the general manager of Thailand with Henkel to moving to Prague, Czech Republic,
Yeah.
with L'Oreal. So
Yes.
how did you manage the hub there with Czech, Slovak, and Hungary? How did that move work out? And also, what a different culture from Henkel and Mars and so on.
Yeah. I mean, to be very honest, it was a culture shock moving from a German company to a French company. The first year I hit the wall. I really hit the wall. 2 changes at the same time I wouldn't recommend. I changed both the company and the country. So 2 parameters at the same time. Czech culture is unique. You need to spend a lot of time to understand the Czech culture. And then the L'Oreal is a French company also. It's extremely different world compared with a German company. So therefore the first year was very tough. But I would recommend to people who are listening, never get desperate, always be open to change. And even in the most desperate moments, you can see it as a learning experience. So, and later on, I got promoted at L'Oreal, but my first year was a disaster. I can honestly say it. So,
Well, that's good to. I mean, not that it's good to hear, but I mean, given if one looks at your CV, then you went on to do several roles in L'Oreal. They took you back to Turkey, then to Singapore, then to finally to Kenya. So
Yeah.
it just comes to show that what you see, like when you see success, um, there's a big story of making sacrifices and having sometimes not the best time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Mehmet, going to the back of the beginning of the conversation, I mentioned that you've been a GM for a long time, but you have like a big interest in e-commerce. How did you become interested in e-commerce? I know that you did some in that first role in Turkey, but why somebody that doesn't have a KPI in e-commerce would become interested in it? I guess that's the big question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I didn't really have KPI at the beginning. When I moved to, first of all, in Turkey, I started to get interested. Turkey is a very young country and the digital ecosystem is quite advanced. There are a lot of e-com startups that get supported. That's the first time I started really becoming fascinated. When I moved on, I was fascinated. Why? Because first of all, the growth was amazing. How the e-com market was growing in Turkey. And then the opportunities about reaching new consumers, increasing our penetration with very low investment. If you are smart and if you know the dynamics of the e-com, I became fascinated how the opportunities were huge. If you could learn and learn and learn and how to, crack the algorithms, understand the platforms, understand, work with the platforms, the pure players. And then when I moved to Thailand, Asia is extremely advanced in e-commerce versus Europe. At that time, it was very advanced. I believe it is still very advanced. If you go to East Asia, e-commerce is very advanced. There you have the Alibabas, you have the Lazadas, Shopees, Tmals. They're extremely advanced in terms of how they reach their consumers. Very innovative. The service they provide to their shoppers, the usage of data, the sophistication of their algorithms, the live streams, the making events out of the 11/11, the Singles Day in China. I was fascinated. There's something called the Singles Day.
Yeah.
That time I was fascinated. That they celebrate being single and everybody sends each other presents for being single. And that's the biggest e-commerce, let's say, season of the year where they make huge sales on 11/11. So 11th of November. So when I was in Asia, I was extremely fascinated by the dynamism, by the innovative concepts they come up with, like this 11th single days, and then the Black Fridays. The amount of sales you make in Black Friday at that time was even huge. Now it's out of universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met some people, some Italians who were working for Lazada. And in my first year, I was single in Bangkok, so I was going out a lot with this Lazada management team. I learned a lot from them. Lazada was just starting, and it became extremely successful before being bought by Alibaba Group. And then I decided to use that opportunity and build an e-com business for the beauty care business of Henkel. And it was very rewarding. The more you focus on it, the more sales you make, and there's no limit. The more you focus, the more it brings growth opportunities. So why should GMs focus on it? Because clearly, it really enables you to reach your KPIs, even if it's not on its own a KPI.
Mm-hmm.
Every GM has a top line and bottom line KPI. You need to reach certain sales target and EBITDA target. And e-com is both profitable, much more profitable than offline, and it was growing minimum at that time 3-4 times than the offline market. So therefore, if you focus on it, it really helps you to achieve your sales target and EBITDA target. And for me, it really helped to reach my overall KPIs, my profit KPIs, my top line KPIs. And it's fun, it's dynamic, it's fun. The only thing is you have to focus on it, learn and learn and learn again. really put some media budget behind it to drive traffic. Retail media, you have to use a lot of retail media.
Yeah.
Search, you have to make sure you dominate the search. In Lazada, when people were looking for hair coloration, it wasn't the competitors, it was always at that time, the Schwarzkopf coloration that was coming up. That happens by investment. And then, of course, sponsored products, we were dominating, driving traffic from digital activations, doing events, online events, like hair coloration day, beauty festivals together with Lazada. They were really rewarding. And then the more you cooperate, these people help you as well because you grow their categories. If you help them grow their category, they support you. So it was the most fun, most rewarding learning experience I had in Thailand. And I was lucky because Asia is a very good school to learn e-commerce because of the dynamism and marketplace was also very fascinating because marketplace means anybody can sell anything they want.
Yeah.
You can open up your own shop. Anybody can open it. You don't even have to be the company. So therefore, I immediately thought this would dominate the e-commerce in the long run, which is happening in Europe. So Europe is moving to marketplace as well. Because it's much more profitable when the companies don't hold stock and just work as an intermediary 3P model, just help companies.
Is it more profitable for the retailer or for the brand?
For retailer, and if you
And
start
not for the brand, no?
For brand, it is less profitable because you have to send the product yourself.
Yeah.
But depends on the conditions. If like Amazon is asking a lot of conditions because they ship it to the end consumer and they have really hard conditions in Europe. So marketplace in Europe and Asia is much more profitable than the retail model because the conditions are much favorable. You give like maximum 10% or 12% to the platform for providing you that marketplace. Whereas if it's like a normal customer where they keep the stock, obviously for logistics, for distribution, for warehouse and all the stuff, they charge you much more structural conditions. Based on the conditions, it could be really much more unprofitable. It can change customer by customer, but marketplace, I believe, for the brands tend to be much more profitable, and it's also much more profitable for the e-commerce platforms as well. Therefore, many companies, more and more in Spain, everywhere we see marketplace booming. And I think it's going to continue booming too. It's much more sustainable.
And one thing, like this model of 3P marketplace and so on, I think it's favored a lot the appearance of like smaller, in beauty, for example, indie brands.
Bravo. Absolutely. That's the only threat. It gives an open space to indie brands, local brands where they can flourish.
Yeah.
They're really becoming a threat for big companies. And they use, thanks to TikTok, content where you can reach people organically by creative content at mass scale. And when then they generate awareness without huge media budgets like big international companies, thanks to TikTok. So TikTok was a big game changer, has been a game changer. And then marketplace is a big game changer as well. So in the last 5 years, we see a big shift where small local companies are challenging big global companies everywhere in Europe, North America, in Asia. I think this is going to continue because the entry barriers have been diminishing thanks to e-commerce and also thanks to TikTok. In the good old days, I'm saying as a global company employee, in the good old days, you would do mass media television, which small companies cannot do, to build your equity, brand awareness, mental and physical availability. And in order to enter Carrefour or Walmart, you need to pay big listing fees, which obviously small companies cannot. So the entry barriers were huge.
Yeah.
And now the entry barriers are not there. You can enter, all these marketplaces for free. And then the more you sell, if they're okay, you give the commission. It's zero entry barrier when you're selling your product as a marketplace. You can easily get a scale.
Yeah.
And then for the first money, you can do some TikTok marketing with very creative stuff. With little money, you can really build your, you can build a bit awareness and even short-term sales with the TikTok. And TikTok is extremely useful for these indie brands as well, and they know how to use it much better than big companies. So therefore, we see these small companies becoming way too successful uh, in personal care, in food, everywhere, and therefore big companies it's going to be a big challenge. So for your question, that's another reason for GMs to capture e-commerce. If you want to compete against local brands, indie brands, you have to be very successful in e-commerce, and you have to be very successful in TikTok as well, because those are the platforms where these small guys grow.
And you and L'Oreal, being from a bigger, more traditional company, can you give me like an example of something that you did at these marketplaces to compete with this rising competition?
Yeah, I mean, in Turkey, when I was the general manager of L'Oreal Turkey, the small indie brands increased their market share based on Nielsen to 30% in skincare especially. So that was a big drama, because even our, the big global players, they were not the threat. These indie brands were the threat. So we shifted huge, and we recognized, we did an investigation. The team's marketing people presented. They did a deep dive to the history of these indie brands. And it's exactly what I've been now explaining. We recognize they get a scale from marketplace. They grow from marketplace. Turkey is also predominantly marketplace environment. And then they use digital and TikTok very effectively. So what we did, before they can get a free ride from e-commerce and free ride from TikTok, we have to dominate TikTok. We have to dominate e-commerce, because once they get a scale, it's too late, because they enter Watson's or big beauty store, then it's game over. Then they already like a big player as well. They accelerate further, then the game over. So before they go to that level, you have to make sure you compete with them where they grow, which is e-commerce and TikTok. So this is what we did. We put much more money from media budget to e-commerce, especially retail, because the advantage of big companies, they still have big monies, the big pockets. So we shifted that big pocket from TV to retail media of e-commerce to make sure whenever, for example, you look for a serum, face serum, or high pigmentation, dark spots on your face, the first thing that pops up was L'Oreal products. The first thing, the banners of L'Oreal, the CRM campaigns, we put huge money. So the number one, putting big money there. Number two, putting your best talents and shifting more and more people there. So that in e-commerce, you have much better content than the competition, much better content, videos, online makeup tools with AI supported, especially after the pandemic, people are afraid to use other lipsticks on their, bodies. So when you put them an AI supported face recognition where they can still put the makeup through the online, tools, it really helps. So this is a big service in the e-commerce that the small players cannot afford. So that's another way to differentiate, to improve the consumer experience at the platform by these AI tools that they do face recognition, online lip. You look at you open up your camera and you choose the lip. And first thing, Danielle has the lip on your color of pink that you choose, for example, exactly the same tone, exactly the toners, primers, everything, mascaras, they look exactly how it's supposed to look on your face. So their conversion rates increased significantly when we use these tools. The videos, the tools, and then the ratings. We use a lot of ratings, ratings. We shipped like 2,000 products to people so that they could rate it, because ratings play a big role on the algorithm. After when they rate you really good, the product pops up, more visibility in the e-commerce. So we proactively did that. That's another way you can use your money to differentiate yourself against the small brands. And then finally, the longest where we challenged was TikTok. TikTok is the area where big companies don't have the muscles, because the way it works, you have to create not what big companies do. They create like 2, 3 very good creative assets for your brands done by professional agencies. So that used to work very well. Now, what these small guys are doing, they create like 200 very amateur, very authentic content. Some of them are stupid, some of them are goofy, and it works, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then a couple of them work, a couple of them become viral, and then they do seeding. They put the money on the ones that are really going viral, then they become much more mega viral. So this game, creating 300, 400, even 1,000 content per week, is not the muscle of big companies. That's the where I struggled a lot. How do you create such a big scale of content? Because the companies have also high quality standards too. You want to focus on your branding, visuals, all the stuff. So therefore, it took us a long journey to understand TikTok and how to crack the algorithm. The e-commerce, we cracked it very fast with money, focus, putting the right people, and being close to our customers. The TikTok is the one that really took a much more longer. And now the TikTok shop came, where you don't only, which disrupted the whole e-commerce market. You don't only, drive excitement for the product. You can even buy it
Yeah.
at the same
I,
time.
and I heard this. I heard this huge percentage of consumers in China that now buy their groceries and
Huge. They really disrupted the e-commerce ecosystem.
Yeah.
Huge disruption. And it will come to Europe too, and you will see it will disrupt Europe as well once
Well,
Asia.
you think it will?
Sorry?
Well, you think?
Oh, it's going to be a big game changer because, I mean, imagine if you talk to your relatives who are young, teenagers, they use TikTok. And the moment they will start buying from TikTok at the platform is going to be a big game changer because they're already there, but they cannot buy it. So the moment they will start buying, it's going to be a game. UK is already seeing it. Only place, as far as I know, is UK, where TikTok shop started. And it's already disrupting the UK e-commerce ecosystem. And I think when it will come to Spain, France, it will be a big game changer as well. And companies are not ready for this,
Interesting. So I have a question for you because while it's true that like these indie brands can really grow very quickly on these platforms, it's true that a lot of them also they disappear very fast and they go out of trend very fast. What do you think is like will be the winning formula for like strong like historical brands on FMCG that want to like maximize these trends, but still, they have to keep their brand equity because we've seen a lot of brands that try to jump on the bandwagon without really thinking twice, and they destroy billions in equity from one day to the next.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the product itself is the thing that will make the big difference. Some indie brands invest a lot of time to build excellent products, and some don't. The ones who really invest a lot of time and build expertise, especially in skincare or in sophisticated categories like skincare, with the much better textures, much better packaging, and they really stay in the market. The ones who are more opportunistic and running for short-term profits and not those standard products, I think they disappear. I think the product, based on my experience, is the one that makes this difference, whether the indie brands remain or not. But based on the experiences I have in Germany, in Turkey, in Asia, in Thailand, in Singapore, all the brands that we see are still successful. All these indie brands are the ones that have the excellent products, like Skintific, for example, is growing like hell in Asia, expanding geographically. And if you would go to Asia, you can look into one of the beauty stores, Watson's. The packaging is excellent. The texture is really beautiful. The products they built, they really understood the consumer needs. Especially Asian skin with humidity and with the heat. You need products that dissolve much faster and which are lighter textures, and they understood it much better than big companies, I think. And the serums, they have a higher concentration of active ingredients. So because of cost of goods restrictions, the big companies have to limit the active ingredient percentage. Well, these indie brands, they just put as maximum as possible for maximum efficacy. Whether it's vitamin C, whether it's hyaluronic acid or ceramides, the active ingredients, they make a lot of difference as well when you increase the percentage of the active ingredients. They perform better. So that's my observation, that the product itself makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you've been a GM for a long time, but also clearly been in the weeds of what was happening in digital. How would you recommend other GMs that are listening, that maybe they felt until now that these digital things were like too far from them and too much in the weeds? How can they become involved? How do you recommend they get involved in the detail while still being a GM and being strategic?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think the number one thing is an infinite mindset. It's all about the mindset. Um, you need to have the right learning mindset and be open to change. And most important is to unlearn. The challenge is not to learn, but also to unlearn, because many of the things are changing. The rules of the game, I think, is changing fast especially in the last 5 years, because of the reasons I tried to explain. So the challenge is not to learn, but you have to also unlearn. Many of the things you think I learned in MBA is not valid anymore. How you build big brands with TV, big money, it's changing. How you build brands, how you build sales, sustainable P&L. In FMCG, I think it's changing a lot. So you have to unlearn and learn constantly. And the other thing is, the GM should not be afraid to fail, and they should be afraid not to try, because in the new ecosystem, it's all about trial and error and learning. Because the way I was educated in my career, you do things perfectly, perfect execution, perfect packaging, activation needs to work, perfect media plan. Everything is analytically justified, process efficiency. That, I think, is not the winning model. Agility is the new winning model. Speed is the new different competitive advantage. And you have to test and learn in the digital area. Nobody has the number one formula that said this is how it works. You just do it by test and learn in the new TikTok and e-commerce ecosystem. And then you need to be accepting organized chaos, because my favorite ideas are often coming from organized chaos process. And this is not how big companies are organized. Big companies don't like chaos. They like structures, processes, efficiency, especially, big American companies. It's all about productiveness, efficiency. That's not the winning formula. You have to accept unorganized chaos in the digital world. So, and then being curious and constantly spending time with younger people, I would definitely recommend, because they really know it really well, the young generation.
Yeah, and that will be like
The diversity, DNI, hanging out with diverse employees, diverse backgrounds really helps in terms of having diverse talents. And having really younger people in the team, learning from them makes a lot of difference. The best GMs I've seen at L'Oreal are the ones who were hanging out with young people, learning, curious, discovering with them. So this mindset helps a lot as well. So these are my basic recommendations. I would say.
And Mehmet, this wouldn't be an FMCG guys episode without our famous last question, which is, with everything that you've learned in your career, if you went back to the beginning, what's that one piece of advice you would give yourself?
One advice I would give myself, well, I would say fun. I think that makes the big difference. Having fun is the one big advice I would say. Having fun makes a huge difference. If you're not having fun, I would definitely change either company, country, or job. If you're having fun, you learn, and you have this mindset that you adapt to the new age much faster, because fun makes a big difference. If you're having fun because you spend too much time at the office, it has to be fun. You need to have fun. Uh, and if you're having fun, then you perform, you grow, you learn. It becomes like work plus a hobby, then it's much better. Fun is the thing. I think I would be one big advice would be for me definitely having the fun element, not underestimate it.
I agree. So Mehmet, I really enjoyed the conversation from how you went to the US to do your MBA, going to Germany, learning the language through socializing over beers, going into your curiosity really around e-com because it was, from a very pragmatic point of view, a new way to reach consumers, a growing channel and low investment. And you could trial and error. I think along the lines of what you were saying about having fun at work, I think it's something that gives you energy, but it's really like something that in a lot of verticals, it will be the future where I think that maybe here in Europe, we're not that aware about the rise of marketplaces. Like we've talked about the different ones with Lazada, but TikTok Shop as well. And we need to put the money where these consumers are. And it's a bit the channel, no? Like finding the right channel and making big bets, but also trial and error. So it's that combination and also being true to the brand while still being relevant to the consumer. No, I think that this will be the big challenge. I think it's the big challenge for marketers, for e-commerce people, but obviously as well, like you have met for the general managers.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you a lot. I had high expectations for this one, Mehmet, and it didn't disappoint. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, and thanks to all our audience as well. And we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great day.